Yuuna and the Haunted Hot Springs, the thrilling Steamy maze Kiwami has a long title. It is developed by Furyu and published by Active Gaming Media, who were kind enough to provide me with a review copy on Steam. This cute and colorful romantic comedy, roguelike, RPG dungeon crawling adventure, and waifu cleansing simulator is relatively fun, upbeat, and challenging, but with a few really problematic design decisions that make it less appealing. But let's be honest, are you really expecting greatness from a mid to low tier anime game where this happens? Maybe you are, I won't judge. This game is much like a dip in a hot spring itself. It's cold and a bit uncomfortable until you get into the water, then a pleasant experience that you enjoy for a while until you look at your wrinkly fingers and realize that it's time to get out before you become a raisin. The game begins as the only male character in the game, Kogarashi, and his friend Ghost Girl Yuuna run down to the storage room of the Yuragi Hot Springs Inn. While cleaning, the entire cast of the anime shows up all of a sudden and finds a dreamy miniature garden. Every character but 3 of them gets sucked into the garden, which features as the dungeon for the game. Playing as Yuuna, you have to rescue the different girls who are trapped in their own part of the dungeon, and eventually Kogarashi, who is currently stuck in the form of a doll. The dungeon is the main game mode. You can play as up to 2 girls and travel around in big square rooms connected by long hallways to smaller rooms. You will be confronting enemy dolls and spirits who only move when you do. So it's a turn-based system, but you can move around freely when not fighting. Your partner can follow along and attack enemies as well. The main combat is attacking within reach of the enemies and taking turns, using your placement and various items, and some special abilities, to get to the end of each dungeon floor. Eventually, you will get to a final story scene or encounter that allows you to exit, and go back to the inn, which acts as a hub world. But it's really just a series of different backgrounds with rectangular menus. Then you can go to the Resonance Spring and use Power Soap that you find in the dungeon to play a mini-game where you have to knock away evil spirits while the heavily censored anime girl makes cute, sexy noises as you give her a nice bath. This is probably the most fun you'll have in the game, and while your chosen girl will be clean, you will probably feel very, very dirty. You can then use Synthesis to strengthen your weapons and armor by adding materials to it. And yes, one of the materials that you can strengthen weapons with is the actual bath water left over from the minigame you just finished. Waste not, want not. There is also a shop where you can buy and sell various armor and weapons. Equip your characters with the best equipment and head out into the dungeon again. The floors get harder and longer as you complete missions. The first several missions are simply saving the characters, and then there is more main story afterwards. There are challenge dungeons and all kind of difficult endgame activities, too, for those who take the time to really get into the different systems. At the beginning, the game is a bit shallow like a hot spring, but it has a lot of hidden depth that begins to reveal itself as you play. And I do mean reveal. There's an item that tears your clothes. Yep. In order to use a special ability and also gain passive buffs. When I started playing this game, I really didn't love it. There's no controller support, and you have to play in a tiny window until after the first dungeon. There are no graphics settings for 1080p or anything. You can only adjust the screen size. The game looks fine in full screen, but the game doesn't upscale very well, and the characters appear a bit pixelated. The keyboard controls are really strange. Both WASD and the directional keys are movement. Instead, they want you to use mostly Y to open inventory, N to attack enemies, but also cancel out of menus, and use R to open a menu that lets you select your inventory, etc. with the directional keys. While in the dungeon, the mouse brings up a mobile game style directional pad, and there are moves that use weird combinations of buttons like Y plus F and the directional buttons. Whoa! Okay, that is really fast. In general, the game is kind of lazy and non-intuitive when it comes to ease of use on a PC keyboard. I don't really like the inventory management. You get these cool buckets that allow you to move items to your storage while in the dungeon, so you won't lose them if you die. It's nice, but trying to manage only 30 slots worth of items that fill up very quickly can be tough, and there is no destroy item feature or dismantle feature. It's a roguelike and a nasty one at that. If you die in the dungeon, you leave your body behind with all of your items. Everything you had equipped, gone. There are these large rooms full of enemies that have lots of loot, but can be very hard. You can easily get ganked because certain enemies are just really unbalanced. I did what the game told me and moved into a corridor where I could fight the enemies one-on-one, like in the movie 300, where numbers count for nothing. But then I got attacked by an enemy that was too strong and I couldn't out-heal the damage. I died easily and lost. Being in the early game, I had almost no currency to buy items. This was mostly due to inexperience, but this was the third dungeon and a bit of bad luck. The advantage of the PC port is that you get lots of DLC items included. These are pretty broken, and other than trying out a few of them, I've kept most of them in storage as to not make the experience too easy and underwhelming. I went on Steam's new controller settings feature and made my PS5 controller work with the game. After that, I could play much smoother and the game became a lot more fun. I get irritated because this game has some love put into it in the form of story, artwork, and characters. They show each armor piece in the characters as a costume, and that's a cool feature. They took the time to do that. But they didn't have time to add controller support on a game that has a console port or add some PC exclusive settings. They did add a lot of detailed information you can access, as well as old scenes and story parts you've unlocked. I just wish the early game was more welcoming when you started playing. As you've been watching this, I'm sure you've already made your decision on if this is your thing or not. Overall, it is a perfectly suitable dungeon game with a decent amount of depth, with fun, cute characters that, despite being well within recognized anime tropes, are positive and sometimes refreshing with their attitudes. And there is definitely enough fan service to appease your inner weeb. Or your outer weeb. Yuuna and the Haunted Hot Springs, the thrilling steamy maze Kiwami, is a fun, slightly awkward, yet cozy dip in the hot spring, but that water is getting warmer and it's up to you how long you can stand it. I give Yuuna and the Haunted Hot Springs, the thrilling steamy maze Kiwami, an average yet hopeful 3 bars of Spirit Power Soap sitting in a hot spring in front of a bathing, half-naked ghost girl censored by Steam out of 5. This is Dan T from Twisted Banana Productions signing off from the lonely men's side of the hot spring.